Someone wanted your thoughts/review of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
So I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was a teenager, and it had a huge impact on my life. I did not come from wealth. Nobody in my life that I knew ran a successful business that I was able to model. I didn't have examples around me of how to think like an entrepreneur versus thinking like an employee. I just knew at a very young age through life circumstances, being raised by a single mom who always struggled financially, that I wasn't going to be in an environment where I wasn't going to get paid on my performance. And it seemed like all the wealthiest people got paid big chunks of money based on a result, not just for showing up. And it seemed like employees mostly got paid to show up and to get a very specific result that was limited. I saw this with my mom, so I knew that wasn't going to be me. And somebody gave me the book and said, well, I think you'd really enjoy this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And it was music to my ears because it gave me a framework of understanding the difference between the employee path and the entrepreneurial path. Now, it's his personal experience and it's his perception of both of his dads, right? His real dad, which he calls Poor Dad, and his rich dad, which is his best friend's dad. But there is a lot of truth in what he is saying. Now, I don't endorse Robert Kiyosaki as far as his views and the things he's espousing in the world today, but I also don't have a problem eating the meat and spitting out the bones and acknowledging when somebody speaks truth. I don't really care who speaks truth, I seek truth. So as long as what they're saying is true, it doesn't really matter to me who is saying it, I can receive it and use it. For whatever reason, that seems to be a struggle for a lot of humanity. I don't really struggle with that. Truth is truth. So in the book, he kind of disparages his poor father's path and glorifies his rich father's path. The principles he's teaching, I think, are fairly sound when understanding the difference between being an entrepreneur and being an employee, but I wouldn't receive it as one is better than the other. It mostly has to do with what your outcomes are, what you're seeking. Now, if his poor father wanted the same things his rich father wanted, which it isn't clear to me that he did, then maybe you could judge it as, well, his path to getting there didn't work. But maybe he was passionate about education. Maybe he was in the education system because he wanted to make an impact there, which if you remember the story, he's a teacher and then becomes a superintendent. However, that path didn't lead to wealth. I don't think everything is about money, however, since you're asking for my review of the book. But freedom is very hard in Western society without money. So being financially intelligent and knowing what to do with money and leveraging money is really important. The book teaches you that. It teaches you principally anyway what to do with that and the different paths that people are on. So if his poor dad believed he was going to have the same outcomes as his rich dad and didn't get there, then maybe that's a lesson in what not to do. But perhaps his poor dad did exactly what he wanted to do and what he valued. The problem I would run into, and that was his pushback, is then to impose that his son should want the same things he wants, which obviously he pushed back against and became a successful entrepreneur in his own right. So it's a book I still recommend because it does a great job of explaining leverage, OPM, OPT, principles of business that can be very helpful when you are deciding what you want from your life, and that's it. My goal is to help people get clear about what they want, not impose on them what they should want.
How can someone choose what to do with the rest of their life when they are undecisive?
I appreciate the question, and this is a very normal question. Hey, how do I figure out what I'm here to do, or what is my purpose, or how do I move forward in life with a plan when I'm really not sure? I would say a good plan or even a fair plan is better than no plan. And depending on what season of life you're in, and I don't know how old you are, so it may change my approach a little bit if I knew your age, but I would say generally it's better to just start taking action and move in a direction versus doing nothing as a whole. There are exceptions to that, but as a whole, movement, it's much easier to direct something that's in movement than something that is standing still. And so I'd pick a path and I'd follow your effort more than your passion around that path. It turns out when people start to get good at things, they tend to get passionate about them as a rule. Again, there are exceptions. So I'd pick a path and start moving it. And then what will happen is as you start moving forward, you'll start to notice, hey, I'm good at this or I'm not good at this. I don't enjoy doing this. I do enjoy doing this. And it will kind of help direct how you move forward. Just make sure you're also very aware of how your emotional conditions, your patterns of thought are impacting your daily work. Sometimes what we're here to do gets muddled in our own emotional condition and it's not always so obvious what's going on there. So that's where the work of practicing self-awareness and self-discovery can help you understand, how am I holding myself back? But in general, I would say move forward, take action, and it will kind of unfold for you if you just trust in that process. I say this all the time, but it's very true. If you planted an apple seed, you are only going to get an apple tree. And you don't have to think about it. You just know that's what's going to happen. All of us have seeds of greatness in us. All of us have seeds that bear our purpose. I firmly believe that. And all we have to do is get into a place where we can grow and the conditions are ripe for growth, and what is in us will come out naturally. And then it's about doing the work, about removing those things that no longer serve us or holding us back from moving into that next purpose. Hope that helps.
What do you think it means to have good character? Do you think there's been a loss of good character in our society?
Good and bad get really tricky. Good and bad changes depending on the culture. Good and bad can change based on the family or the individual. Although I think there are things that we as humans generally accept as bad and things we generally accept as good, there is a level of subjectivity to it. But for the sake of the question, I would assume you mean somebody of high, upstanding, moral character, meaning that they show up in a way that is ethical and integrous. What does that mean? One, I would say it means that there's a level of integrity to how you show up, meaning how you present yourself is actually who you are, or at least the gap between who you present yourself as and who you actually are is pretty frickin' small. And that's really important. It's really important for you, not for others, because if you have a big, what I call identity gap, you're going to be very frustrated with how powerless you feel in the world and how hard it is for you to meaningfully move the needle in your life. And you can also feel very alone and isolated in that because you're literally disconnected from yourself. So for me, high character and integrity are linked in that you are showing up in the values that you present to the world. And I think this is really, really important. Imagine a world where people didn't lie. In energy, there is no falsehood. So we live in a human condition, and the only thing that can perceive, or that could be lied to, we could say, is our brain, right? In energy, there is no lie. Energy cannot conceal itself, it cannot hide itself, it cannot fake that it is something that it is not. It is what it is. And in the world of the spirit, that is very much the case. It is what it is. Humans can be lied to because we perceive through our level of understanding, and we use a brain that is highly subjective in its approach to life, which makes this world somewhat fun and enjoyable, which is why we do it. But the ability to believe a falsehood makes things a little bit more confusing here. So imagine a world where people didn't lie. They showed up purely in who they are. To me, someone of good character would be somebody who shows up candidly and authentically in the values that they believe. Now, you get to choose whether or not that's a value system you subscribe to, or whether or not you want to participate in that particular value. Whether or not people show up in good values or not, or good character or not, I would say this. We live in a society that quickly judges based on appearance, and first impressions matter. And so unintentionally or intentionally over time, we have prioritized personality over character. And personality is really about first impressions. It's about painting this world to others, about how your life looks. That may or may not be accurate to the way your life looks. And so because we have prioritized our appearance, or what I would call the ideal self, we very often have lost sight of our real self, which is the character that we show up in, meaning the values that we truly operate from. And so because of that, we could say then that it appears that there has been a decrease in moral character. Whether or not we can quantify that accurately or not, I don't know. But it certainly appears that way because of how connected we are and how information transfers so fast. And so that can create problems. The ultimate kind of solution to that in my world is people to get to know who they truly are, to take a accurate and consistent check-in on their values and how they choose to show up in the world, and live in awareness, which allows them radical honesty, which then invites them into responsibility. And so to me, that's the path forward: awareness, honesty, responsibility. And that's how we get on a path where people are showing up in integrity, and it's much, much easier to navigate the world.